Hari Om, all of you, and pranam to you, Swamini ji.
So thank you very much, Saji, for that very beautiful introduction. I'm very happy to see all of you joining in at weird times of the day, I'm thinking. But it's all nice to connect. Huh? So the topic is discovering love and happiness. Okay, it's a very unusual topic. At the same time, it's not so unusual. But we will also invoke the grace of Patanjali. So I will do the prayer also and then we will begin. Okay. Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakarotam pravaram muninam Patanjalim pranajalirānatosmi Abahu purushakaram Shankhachakrasidharinam Sahasrashirasam shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Om. So we seek the grace of the entire lineage, the Guru Shishya Parampara. Before we begin every class, as I'm sure most of you know. So most yogis are looking for Nirvikalpa Samadhi, correct? That's like the highest anga. Then why are we talking about love and happiness? Because Nirvikalpa, okay, the word means no divisions, no separation, not even connectedness. Nirvikalpa means all that is there is one. And that oneness in the vision of Advaita has to be discovered. So, in this short time, where shall we begin? So, I am thinking that most of you, being yoga teachers, are familiar with Ashtanga Yoga. Okay, so of course you know Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, right? All 8. Okay. Now I want to pick Niyama. Okay, the second, which are referred to as observances. So tapas, swadhyaya, Ishvara pranidhanani niyama. So these observances for any yogi are threefold. Tapas, which is a religious discipline, Swadhyaya, self-study, and now is an interesting word, Ishvara Pranidhanam. Okay, Ishvara is a word for the Lord who doesn't have a boss, okay, so who's not lorded over by anyone, who is the sustainer of everything. And Pranidhanam is the one who places oneself in Ishvara. In other words, surrender to Ishvara is a part of yoga. Okay? So then some people may ask, is there any asana for this surrender to God? I am an atheist or I am an agnostic. Why is God entering the picture? So there is no asana. And we have to answer the question, who is this Ishvara? And why should I surrender to him? I have prided myself on being strong and independent. Everything I managed to do on my own in this world. Why should I surrender to anyone? Okay, it's a very valid question, and we will answer this. So in the light of Vedanta, we have a very beautiful phrase. Actually, it's a mantra in Ishavasya Upanishad, and the Upanishad makes a declaration. Ishavasyam sarvam idam. All that is here is Ishvara. Okay, I'm using the word Ishvara now for God. But then you will say, okay, all that is here is Ishvara. Means what? That means all the different forms, the different communities, the different people, the different things, all valleys, mountains, huge galaxies. All that is Ishvara. Yes? Yes. Oh, I don't believe you. Okay, let's talk further. Because Vedanta is not a matter of belief. It is a matter of understanding. So suppose I tell you, can you see my beautiful elephant-like ears? Okay. You will start to think, oh, this Swamini has gone crazy. She needs help. She used to be a former psychologist, you know. But I think she's gone crazy. I can tell you, no. You need to have some Shraddha. You need to have some trust. I am a Swamini. You have to believe me. Okay. But you will say, no, I don't see it. So I am not asking you to believe me. I am asking you to see what the words reveal. Okay, you better not believe me. Huh? So we want knowledge. We don't want belief. And we have a very nice definition for Ishvara. I don't know about y'all, but I had a lot of doubts when I was growing up. In fact, for a certain phase, I know it's a bit ironical, but for a few years, I was an atheist and also an agnostic. And actually, I have a lot of respect for people who are atheists and agnostics. You know why? Because they are willing to take a position. They have some idea, okay? And God doesn't fit that idea. And so therefore, they can take the position, no, I am an atheist, or I don't quite know and I have not concluded, I am okay to be an agnostic. Okay? Thinking people is a good thing. So, we may have our reasons to not have trust or understanding of Ishvara, but here Vedanta comes to our rescue. And Ishvara is revealed as Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karanam, which means that Karanam, that cause, which is both the material and the intelligence of the world. So what does all this have to do with love and happiness? Wait, we are coming to that, okay? So let's understand how relatively we play the role of Ishvara, okay? So I don't know if there's anyone here from Greece, but let's say one of the very beautiful islands, okay? Creta maybe, I don't know if it's pronounced correctly. So you dream, last night you had a dream. You are now in this resort in Greece. Let's say you live in Australia, okay, and you traveled all the way to Greece. And then in your dream, everything is there in one instant. Just very beautiful white sands, deep blue waters, you, your partner, and there's a lovely breeze. You are on the beach, and then you decide to also do your asana on the beach. Then your body is feeling really flexible, agile, and you're very centered with your breath. Then as you are doing your asanas, a lot of people gather around you to watch you, because you have learned very well from Saji, okay? So you are doing, everything is flowing beautifully, and then as soon as you finish, there is someone waiting there amidst the crowd, and that person invites you to give a talk. Okay, asks you a few things about how long you're there in Greece, and then says, please, we would be very honored if you come to give us a talk. So you extend your hand and then you wake up. Okay. Now, this is a dream like any other dream. But the beautiful thing about any dream is that the material for the dream, the white sands, the blue waters, your partner, what the partner was wearing, thinking, feeling, doing, and all the people on the beach, and what they said, the weather, the feel of the sand, all the material for the dream came from you. So you might argue, oh, it's just memories. But it's true, in the dream, everything felt very real. All the laws, all the principles, the intelligence of the dream. It was not that the sand was upside down. It was not that, the waters were on the top and the sand was somewhere else. Okay, nothing of the sort. There was a certain intelligence in that dream, and even the intelligence came from you. Correct? So as the dreamer, you gave rise to a creation. So you were the Ishvara of your dream. Okay? The material for your dream, all the materials I have mentioned, and the intelligence of that dream, it came from you. So now we can appreciate the possibility that this Jagat, this thing that we see, this mind, body, sense complex, and all the things I interact with, all that possibly could be Ishvara. So this could all this is the material, and all this is very, very intelligently put together. Correct? So now we have tackled one part of Ishvara Pranidhanam, because it's a part of Niyama. So it is a discipline of a yoga teacher. Correct? That alongside things that I avoid, which is all the yama, we also have niyama, what I need to bring into my life, what needs to be alive in my life. So this Ishvara Pranidhanam, surrender to God, will come only if we examine what that means. And what that means is first inquiring, well, who is this God? Because it's very likely that a lot of us have been turned away from God because of certain religious conditioning, or if we were made to feel guilty, or there were too many do's and don'ts and we said enough, we don't want all this, right? So now this Narada Bhakti Sutra, okay, very beautiful set of sutras. Sutras are very tight sentences which have to be unlocked, okay. Narada Bhakti Sutra defines bhakti. You might have heard this word, bhakti. Bhakti is Parama Prema Swarupa, okay, which means absolute love for God or absolute love for Ishvara is bhakti. So Parama is absolute, Prema is love, Swarupa, that your very nature is that of absolute love, and it is directed towards Ishvara. So in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagwan Krishna, he talks about 4 kinds of devotees. We might think devotees means only the ones who are singing and dancing. No, you may sing and you may dance, all that is okay. But what is the kind of relationship that the individual has with the total? There are 4. One is the person who only contacts Bhagwan, Ishvara, when the person has some difficulty. Okay. Artha, that's the Sanskrit word. Then there is one who also remembers God from time to time and then writes gratitude journal and all that. Okay. So he keeps God, like a little bit scared also, I better pray so that everything goes off well in my life. There is a third type of devotee who is a jignasu, which means the one who wants to know God. Because this person thinks, well, you know what? You're asking me to surrender to someone I don't know. It's like if you're dating someone, right? Some people may say that I need to date a person for at least 1 year before we decide next steps. But so you say, but why? Oh, no, I have to know the person. Only then I can decide if I want to stay with this person, correct? It's absolutely a fair understanding. So this third type of devotee is not yet ready to surrender. He's saying, you know what, let me try and figure out who is this Ishvara. Okay. And the fourth type of devotee is the one who is a jnani. Jnani meaning the wise person, the one who has discovered that I indeed am Ishvara. That is the Vedanta vision. So, bhakti is Parama Prema Swarupa. That absolute love for Bhagwan, Ishvara, that is bhakti. And it can have many, many expressions. So now what we have to do, and I hope you have some pen and paper. If you don't have, no problem. How do we express our love for others in our life? We have to look at that first. Then we will see what kind of equation we can have with Ishvara. So first of all, if I ask you the question, are you loving? What will you say? I'm hoping you say yes. Okay. Then, if I ask you, are you lovable? There also I'm hoping you say yes. Okay. Some people are not sure, but that's okay. We come to that. So now, if you are loving, the ones who said that, and I'm hoping that everyone said yes, then you might be familiar with the 5 expressions of love. Because it's no point having love in your heart if you're not able to express it, correct? So, this might be familiar to you. Most of us across cultures, we express our love in different ways. The first is words of love and appreciation. So we say a lot of things like, I love you, you matter to me, you mean the world to me, I will always be there for you, you are wonderful at this, so on and so forth. And we would very much like that people around us express their love in that same way. Okay? Then there are some people who will say, you know what, talk is cheap. Words are okay, but is a second form of expression. I want caring actions from the loved person. So right now, lockdown time, at least in some countries, it's not okay for the partner to say I love you, but it has to reflect in your actions. So you have to do a lot of things around the house. I don't have much help. And then the kids are at home and so many things have to be managed. So loving actions, very important to you. The third is quality time. So you might not necessarily be doing something in particular, but you make sure that if you love someone, you spend that time with that person. Okay? The person may not be saying necessarily very appreciative words for you or maybe doing things for you, but just the time that you spend with the person is very valuable to you. The fourth way of our expression of love is physical touch. So some of us are very touchy-feely, right? So if we're talking to the person, we have to hold the person to express our love. And likewise, if suppose we are touchy-feely kind of people, not everyone is like that, some of us are like that, then you will, if that other person does not hold you, does not hug you, you feel the person does not love you. But what is the point is, it is your preferred mode of expression. Okay. And the fifth one is presence. So your way of expressing love for that person is just being there. It's very much like, let's say a 5-year-old child who is playing, doesn't need to talk to the mother or do something, but just keeps looking back. Okay, oh mom, you're still there? No, okay, fine. So I feel very validated and accepted because my mother is around, or whoever the loving person is around. Okay, so now these are the 5, there may be more, but I am taking these 5 ways of expression of our love for another person. So words of appreciation, caring actions, quality time, presence, and physical touch. Okay. So it's quite likely that we will have a dominant style. For some of us, words of appreciation most important. For some of us, physical touch very important. The other things may also be important, but we have a predominant style depending on the factors that shaped us in growing up. And also that we have to recognize that this is a preference. There is nothing right or wrong about it. Everyone has different ways of expression. Now, for me to discover love and happiness in my life, I have to see whether I am expressing my love enough. Okay. This is a tricky question because we might complain, no, the others, they don't express their love. I am very expressive. Or I don't know if I can fully trust the person. So sometimes I express, sometimes I don't. The point I want to highlight is that all of us have different ways of expressing our love. And just because their style of expression is different as compared to my style, my preferred style of expression, it doesn't mean that the person doesn't love me. So we have to be able to first see whether there is love in my life. A lot of the times we think love is conditional, and often it is. Okay? But if you really analyze all the misunderstandings of your life, okay, you will find that a lot of the arguments were because you don't care for me, you don't love me, or you don't do these things for me anymore, etc., etc. Okay, so I want us to be very aware of how much we are surrounded by love only if we had to open our eyes to see it. Okay, and so if my predominant style is one and the other person's style is different, we just have to talk to each other and say, you know what, I prefer it this way, and then the other person, you prefer it that way. Okay, so let's do for each other what you would like. That's all. It's such a simple, straightforward way of managing things. Okay, and the person will feel very cared for because you are willing to do what the other person prefers. Right? So this is all in terms of expression of love. Now, the Upanishad does a fantastic analysis of love. And here when we are talking about love, I'm not just talking about romantic love, but love of parents and love of siblings and friends and children, colleagues, etc., etc. And what is that analysis? The analysis is this. I am the subject, okay? And what is the object of my love, or what I love, is the object of love. Correct? What is not me is the object. I am the subject. Fine? Okay. Now, when I meet someone I really love, okay, I don't feel any separation. There is a meeting of the subject and the object. So the meeting can happen on Zoom, because some people are stuck, they cannot meet each other, or the meeting can happen in person, or it might just be a phone conversation where you feel deeply understood by the person. So what has happened is the disconnection, the separation that was felt, that has collapsed, because now there is oneness experientially, right? And after meeting that person, or while meeting that person, the problems in your life are still there. Okay, maybe your teeth are still crooked and maybe the bills still have to be paid, but you are loving in that moment, and where there is love, there is always happiness. Why? Because there is no disconnection, there is no separation, and in the experience of being loved, there is complete acceptance. Correct? You try to remember your early courtship days, so that you felt so accepted and the other person had no agenda for you. So anything you said, everything you said was absolutely fine. And maybe the person did not know or knew that you snored very badly. Still, person is very accepting of you. So love, happiness, acceptance, they go hand in hand. What I'm talking about is our experience, which the Upanishad talks about. Okay? And while expressing your love for that other person, in whichever way you choose to express, what we are communicating is, you, that is the object, okay, the one I'm relating to, you are lovable, right? And there are so many ways in which I do it. I either do certain things for the person, or I tell the person certain things, and so on. So now, if I am not there, okay, I meet the person feels very loved. Now, for some reason, I am no longer in the picture. What happens to that person? The person can be heartbroken, okay, or I might have transferred the vision that you are lovable, okay. So if the person believes that, understands that, you know what, I am deeply lovable, and that's why this person loved me or loves me, then there is lot of love in my life. Because when I am lovable, when I see that, then I will also be loving towards another person. And in all these experiences, everyday experiences, what is happening is the ego, which is, ego I define as the self-concept, okay? It creates a sense of separation between me and the world. It's required for functioning, but that separation is no longer there because it resolves. So when two egos resolve, then there is only love. So which means a sense of separation is no longer there. And that's why we are deeply happy. This is nirvikalpa. So vikalpa is division. Nirvikalpa means no division. And you think that because of that person, you are loving or lovable. Okay. which means that the transfer of vision has not taken place, and that needs to happen. So then, what is important to note is, in every experience of love, whatever be the nature of love, we get a glimpse of the Ananda. Ananda is wholeness or fullness. That is my true nature. Because there is no more projection. It's the same thing. Even when you spend time in nature, okay? So you are, wherever you are staying, you go for a walk and you're walking by the lake, and the lake has very calm waters and there are ducks there, and you look around, you can see the trees and there's a lovely breeze, and you are in harmony with all of them. Why do I say that? Because you don't criticize the tree. You don't say, my God, you are so ugly. Why did you not grow a little taller? And the waters, when you look at it, you don't say, hey, you know what, you should have been a little bit more blue, or the sky should have been a bit more purple. You have no agenda for what you relate to. In other words, you don't want it to be different. You don't resist the sky, you don't resist the trees, you don't resist the mountains, the stars, nothing. You are in harmony with them. And it's very natural for us to be at peace and to be happy. So what we are beginning to understand is that when I do not resist, when I am in harmony with someone or something, when there is no sense of separation between me and the other, then there is love and there is happiness. Correct? So, when you begin to see that all that is here is Ishvara, your body, mind, sense complex. Body is a temple. So, there are shlokas also. Deho devalaya proktaha. It is said that this body is a temple. You must have learned this as a part of your, exposure to the Indian culture actually. Okay. So, this love that we have for nature, for our children, for our partner, the more and more you see that in that experience, there is oneness, there is no separation, and actually it doesn't have to do with the other person, because you have got a glimpse of the Ananda, the fullness that you are. Okay? So if Ananda, fullness, was intrinsic to your boyfriend, okay? You think that, oh, I'm happy, I feel loved only when my boyfriend is around. Then you think that that Ananda is coming from the boyfriend, okay? But if that was so, then that Ananda would be available for everyone, right? And you don't want that to happen because you all are in an exclusive relationship. So you are very happy, no, only with me, that's fine. So, that Ananda that you are attributing to your partner actually is not coming from him. Yeah. Then, if it was really intrinsic, I'm giving you another argument. If Ananda was very intrinsic to your partner, it would be available all the time. You would always be loving and caring. But no, when dishes have to be done and there's a mountain of dishes in the sink, then you totally lose it. There is no love, no nothing, just lot of shouting and anger, right? So now, that same object which you thought was object of love, that Ananda is it's not available to you, right? So because now there is an inhibiting factor, because of which your focus is on what needs to be done, and okay, love and all is all there, but right now something else is in the foreground. Then that if fullness was totally dependent on your partner, then there is no chance that you can be happy in any other situation, right? But in deep sleep, even in samadhi, for those who have had the experience of samadhi, there is ananda. Of course, you realize that only after samadhi, not during samadhi, because samadhi then you would have created a duality anyway, yeah? So ananda or fullness is not a part of another object. It is not a property of another object. It is your nature which gets invoked when you interact with different people, different situations, and that same understanding we bring to our equation with Ishvara. Because I am trying to understand who Ishvara is, and Bhakti is Parama Prema Swarupa. So this absolute love for Ishvara, how to find it? Because we understand emotional response is not Bhakti. Bhakti can include an emotional response, but the way it is being defined here is that it's much more than that. And that can happen, that absolute love can happen only when you see that there is no difference between you and Ishvara. So Parama Prema Swarupa, that the nature of absolute love for Ishvara is possible only with the vision that I am you, Ishvara. And that is the teaching of Vedanta. So this teaching, for us to see the truth of it, is not easy. It is easy for the ones who are prepared, but for a lot of us, we struggle. And why do we struggle? Because of the Pancha Kleshas. This also you might have heard, 2.3. Avidya, Asmita, Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha. So avidya, ignorance of oneself. Then asmita, too much focus on I. Raga, a craving for something. Dvesha, an aversion towards something. Abhinivesha, fear of death. Okay, 5 kleshas that are mentioned, which disturb us and which prevent us from seeing our oneness with this entire world, and even in a relationship. Okay, lot of the times misunderstanding will happen because of what I'm applying. Okay, I'm applying Pancha Kleshas to a relationship, and then we will extend it to Ishvara. You don't love me, suppose. And the person says, no, of course, baby, I love you so much. I have never loved anyone as much as you. But I have avidya. I have ignorance of that person's love for me. And so I suffer. Or I am saying, you know what, this is what I feel, this is what I think, these are my desires. I am obsessed with myself. That person is saying, but listen to me also. And I'm saying, no. You don't know what I feel. I feel judged by you all the time. Asmita. Obsessed, okay, with myself. I am not available or willing to listen to the other person. Or I have a raga. What is the raga? What is the craving? That when I tell you to get up, you should get up. When I tell you to sit down, you should sit down. You should do what I tell you to do. Okay? So it might sound very loving, that and you will justify it also. After all, who else loves you as much as I do? If I'm telling you something, it is for your good. You have to listen to me. In the name of love, this is what we are trying to control the other person. And this raga prevents me from really having love. because I am inhibiting. It's like, you dam the flow of a river. Okay, dams are required, but here there is this lot of flow of love that we have, but we restrict it, we inhibit it. Then further, dvesha can be there. I hate that person in your office and I don't want you to talk to that person. And then your partner says, but I'm in the same team, we have to work together, minimal interaction I need to have. No, nothing doing. If you love me, you have to listen to me. I hate that person. You will not talk to that person. Dvesha, aversion. And abhinivesha, fear of death. So because of fear of death, there are so many things we don't do. We inhibit, we stop our expression, and we stop living a full life because of small fears that we have. Fear of loss, that is all very universal. Okay, so because of these kleshas, these afflictions, my love for another person becomes conditional, right? It is inhibited and I am not fully expressing myself. Expressing myself is one thing and I can have choices about that, but the Ananda that I am, which is revealed by Vedanta, I have to see that vision. So how do we really discover love and happiness? Okay, one, at a relative level, we try and see what are the things that are inhibiting my expression. All these 5 things that I have spoken so far, and we try and rectify it. Because the one thing that you can control is only yourself. I don't know if you have tried controlling another person and miserably failed. Well, you are not alone. The whole world has failed trying to change another person. But one person you can definitely change, which is yourself. If you're able to bring love into your life by seeing that you are loving as a person, that when you are quiet, when you have peace of mind, your natural state is being loving. And the truth is that you are lovable whether somebody loves you or doesn't love you. Why? Because you are a manifestation of Ishvara. That you actually are Ishvara in terms of the Swarupa, the real nature. Then in terms of functioning, all that you have, your capacity to be agile, flexible, stretch, do all kinds of asanas, pranayama, all those capacities, you didn't invent. It was all given to you. You see the way every cell has so much intelligence. How much oxygen to take, how many nutrients to take. Suppose you say, because of this COVID, I'm going to pump in lot of multivitamins because I want to develop my immunity. Okay, so, but what will the cells do? They are not going to go crazy. They will just take whatever they need. So much intelligence, okay? And this entire material, the intelligence of the body, the intelligence of the mind. And when I say intelligence, I'm talking about a certain order in the way in which things happen. All that, all laws, all principles, they are all Ishvara. So now here I was, this struggling individual, and then I came for yoga course. Then I hear Yama is Ishvara, Niyama is Ishvara Pranidhana, one of the Niyamas. Then I'm thinking how to surrender to Ishvara. I have been an atheist, I have been an agnostic. Then I discover what Ishvara is. And I discover that Ishvara, God, pervades my entire life. that on a day-to-day basis, moment-to-moment basis, I am sustained. My body mind is sustained with the air that blows, with the water I drink, with the food I eat, with the space I have, with the Agni Tattva, the fire element that keeps the body warm. All the while I am provided for. So between me and Ishvara, there is a very deep connection from the standpoint of the form. So I was complaining in terms of lot of people don't do things for me. But all the people in my life who are very appreciative and very supportive, their words of appreciation are possible because of the laws and principles of Ishvara. Then, if we have to look at practical actions as an indication of love, then every moment of my life is being sustained by Ishvara. So we don't know when we are going to die, and then every breath, the air that has such brilliant intelligence does not go into your lungs and say, I refuse to come out. These are the lungs of a yogi. There is so much room, it has so much space, I want to be here. Nothing. As it goes in, it goes out, and of course you can do all your pranayama, correct? So, practical actions, Ishvara is doing very much, all the time, every moment, and wherever you go, you are not denied. Then, in terms of presence, that every moment, Ishvara is present in the form of material and intelligence. And in terms of quality time, so if and when you choose to relate to Ishvara, now do you need to do your hair or have a shave to meet Ishvara? No. Do you need to have some academic qualifications? You have to do TTC, only then Ishvara will give you an appointment? No. Ishvara is only a thought away. That's it. For everyone else, we have to set up Zoom call and phone call, and we have to coordinate time zones. What is the time zone for Ishvara? Every moment. Ishvara is present for all of us at every moment. Presence. Presence in the form of everything that I interact with, every form that I relate to, I interact with, is pervaded by the intelligence and material that is Ishvara. Very much remember our dream in Greece. So of course for the people who are from Greece, they know the problems of living in Greece also, okay? But for foreigners who go there, they're like, oh wow, this is paradise. So just like in my dream, I was the intelligence and the material. Likewise, all that I am interacting with is pervaded by the intelligence and material that is Ishvara. So you see, if we are trying to see, does Ishvara love me? If we are trying to apply these parameters, okay? Are there words of appreciation? Are there wonderful opportunities in my life? Because that's all karma. Are there is there quality time? Quality time is always there. Is there presence? Yes. Is there touch? Every time the wind blows, it is like Ishvara is giving you a hug. Because that Vayu, it is nourishing you. In fact, it gives you life. So, in terms of practical action, well, keeping this body going, despite all the things I have done to use it and abuse it, all I did strict disciplines, or I just let my body go. Whatever happened, well, all the processes were sustained by Ishvara. The more we dwell on this in the light of Vedanta, then we see that there is so much love in our life that there is no reason ever to feel alone or not cared for, because every moment we are being cared for. And then where there is love, there is happiness, there is acceptance. And the point is that we are deeply, very deeply lovable because we are Ishvara. And even if you reject yourself, okay, for whatever reason, Ishvara will not reject. Why? Because you are Ishvara. There has to be a second person to reject, but there is no such rejection. So then, when we clear out our kleshas, afflictions, then we can really live up to the definition of yoga. Because all these things will not disturb us. Then we can truly have mastery of the mind. You know, one of my American friends who studied with me in this 3-year course in the ashram in Coimbatore, okay. So it was a 3-year course intensive with Swami Dayanand Ji in Vedanta in Sanskrit, and we were all asked to speak about what brought us to Vedanta, and it was her turn to speak. So she had been teaching yoga in the US for almost 30 years and also had done a lot of yoga therapy. And I will never forget what she said. She said, through yoga, I mastered my mind. Okay, she's referring to definition of yoga. But then I did not know what to do with a mastered mind. Of course, in her accent, she says, I didn't know what to do with a mastered mind. And then I understood that a mastered mind is required for Vedanta. So she came to Vedanta because she was so prepared with the practice of yoga and ready to see the vision that I am that Ishvara, that there is no separation, there was never any separation. Because if you try through different actions to connect, there will always be disconnection. But if you are able to see that there was never a separation, that all that is here is Ishvara, then naturally there will be love, naturally there will be happiness, naturally there will be acceptance, and of course in that recognition itself there is surrender. Okay, so it's time. Thank you. I will take questions if there are any. Okay, so fantastic questions. What is the second type of devotee? Artharthi. Artharthi is the one who has God as a silent partner. So not only in times of distress and trouble, but also lets God know what I'm up to, keeps God in good humor, is not afraid. So keeps in touch. Okay, not only in times of trouble. Okay, then another question. Do you have a practical example of the combination of Ishvara and Ishvari? Now I'm not sure I understand the question. What is Ishvari? Can you explain the question? Okay, until that person types, let me look at the next one. When a person does not live him, okay, we come back to that. So, practical example of Ishvara and Shakti. I'm not sure what the context of the question is. See, if you're asking about yoga, yoga as a system is based on Sankhya. So, Purusha and Prakriti, right? Now, the system of yoga is slightly different from Vedanta. And I'll tell you why. You won't realize this in asana and pranayama, but in yoga, Saishvara yoga, so yoga with Ishvara, Purusha is the person, or maybe referred to as Shiva, and there is Shakti. Yeah. And because the Prakriti creates problems for me, so I have to see that I am independent of Prakriti. Because both are equally real. That is the yoga framework. In Vedanta framework, what are we seeing? We see that all that is here is Ishvara, which means the capacity for Shakti, creation, exists with Ishvara, and there is no disturbance from Shakti. Okay, so there are slightly different ways of looking at it. Yeah, okay. Next question. When a person does not love himself and does not take care of himself, can he give love to others? There are some martyrs, okay? They feel loved only when they give, and they have a very high need to be needed. So it is not possible, there is not even one person in this world who does not love himself. Not possible. Even a person who commits suicide does it out of love for oneself, that I cannot handle this anymore and I cannot take this pain. The person may not actually state that I am lovable, but it's an indirect way of saying that this is not acceptable to me, I will end my life. Like a couple of hours ago, we just heard, in India, one very famous actor committed suicide. He was only 34 years old. Okay, so that's what the Upanishad reveals, that whatever is loved is not loved for the sake of that person, but that person evokes a pleased self in you. That's not being selfish, that's seeing the truth. Okay, fine. What is Ishta Devata? Correct? Yeah. Ishta means that which is loved. And here I want to introduce 2-3 other terms also. Ishta Devata meaning you, a particular manifestation that you relate to depending on what you need or what you resonate with. So for example, suppose all of you are yoga teachers and you value meditation, you value discipline, and so some of you will relate to Shiva. Okay, so then Shiva becomes your Ishta Devata, and the beauty of the sculpture is that you can relate to God in any way you want. You can relate to God as your lover also, or as a father, as a mother, even as a child. Okay, so that is your Ishta Devata. And then there is also Kula Devata, so family deity. So which is a deity that has been worshipped by your family across generations. The blessings of that deity would be there for you. And so it's important to keep that going. Then there is also Grama Devata. Every place has a particular deity that is blessing it, because that deity's grace has been invoked. So we see different temples across India and you wonder why not only one temple, one deity? Because we have different manifestations. Yeah. Okay. Then how can we help someone who does not have knowledge of yoga and rejects the love from others and always suspicious of others? If it is severe, the person needs to go to a psychiatrist. Okay? Because sometimes some people can be so suspicious that they don't get along with anyone. This is a serious problem. Okay, it's a serious problem. You can't do much about it. You can definitely pray for the person and try to understand how the person feels loved and try and demonstrate that. See, maybe you want to, because yoga has transformed your life, you want to share it with the whole world, okay? Person is not ready. Don't talk about yoga at all. That person just wants to be held. Go and hold that person and hug that person and reassure the person that the person is lovable. Okay, there are different ways in which people feel loved and cared for. When we look at our support system, so our friends, our family, organize an event for that person, and or you make a video. So get different friends to talk something nice about that person, put it all together, let the person believe that the person is lovable. Of course, the problem with the human condition is that we have so much self-judgment, okay, that we, sometimes we are not able to see the love of that other person for us. That person then needs to go for some therapy or some counseling will help, so that the person discovers some level of self-acceptance. Okay, so it will be a combination of what you can do for the person and what that person does for himself or herself. And even if the person is not willing to go for yoga, then even if the person starts to go for a walk, that would be brilliant, because there has to be some movement, okay, for some change to happen. Okay. In the time of Sushupti, is the mind there or not? The mind is resolved in Sushupti, deep sleep. Then continuing, sometimes they say that there is no mind. That is why there is nothing there. Sometimes they say that the mind is there in the form of seed. What is your opinion? Well, my opinion is the opinion of the Shastra. Okay, I don't have an independent opinion outside the tradition. And the tradition says that the mind is resolved. It is there, but it is resolved. And by one stretch of an argument, it is said that it is there in seed form. Seed form in the sense that because we are using the mind to express, not during sleep but after sleep, that I was the one who slept well. Okay, that's why we say it is there in seed form. Actually speaking, the mind is resolved. When it's resolved means what? There is no dream also. But I, the witness, okay, I, that is limitless, that is the witness. So Chaitanyam, Sakshi Chaitanyam is very much there, but doesn't have language to express, because we use the mind to express, right? So that's why, to account for me to express that I was there in deep sleep, we will say that the mind is there in seed form. But it is not right to say that nothing is there. Nothing is there, then that's it, over. Over for you, then you have reached God knows where. Okay. Any other questions? Lovely. How can we cultivate Ishvara in ourselves? We start to relate to Ishvara. And how do we relate? Suppose you want to date someone, what do? You spend time with that person, correct? And so you spend some time with Ishvara. How to spend time? Where to spend time? Well, you spend quiet time. And you first try to understand what Ishvara is. So you can attend some of our classes where what Ishvara is, what are the various forms, is better understood. Then the thing about love is that it's important to physicalize it. So we have this very beautiful practice of puja. Okay, in a puja, perhaps some of you all have done, there is a fivefold offering. So what are you going to offer to God who has given you everything? You can't offer really anything much. But as a symbol of the 5 great elements, you make 5 offerings. So what is yours, I'm offering to you, and in that I see a connection. It's like, suppose if it's your birthday today and your son does not wish you at all. So you'll be upset, correct? What is this? My son did not wish me for my birthday. And the son may say, you know what? I don't need to wish. There is love in my heart. I don't need to wish my mother or father. So you'll think, my God, something's wrong with my son. You want that love to be physicalized, expressed. And so likewise, you're trying to get to know Ishvara. You start doing some actions. Even when meditating, every mantra you're chanting, you are connecting to Ishvara. Then even in the way in which you relate to different people, if you are being loving, you are relating to Ishvara. So what we see is that when you bring in dharma in your life, when you are upholding justice, you are upholding love, you are upholding compassion, you are cultivating Ishvara in your life. Cultivating Ishvara meaning cultivating the understanding of Ishvara in your life. So more and more you feel connected to anything and everything. Okay, so then of course there's so much love and happiness in your life. Okay, next question. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, give me your mind and give me your heart. Okay, this is not the direct translation. And thus, making me your goal supreme, you will in truth come to me. How can we, very good question. How can we know the difference between true love and attachment, devotion and dependence? Very good question. See, true love is devotion. Okay. When we say true love, it's only possible with Ishvara, it's not possible with anybody else. Yeah. Now, and that love is not just an emotional response, it is an understanding of oneness. Attachment or dependence is that some conditions have to be fulfilled for me to feel loved. If Ishvara gives me 1000 yoga students, then Ishvara loves me. Then I will have some devotion. Okay. Here I am struggling to make a living. I have devoted my life to yoga and what all I have sacrificed, but Ishvara denies me. Okay. So now I had love. Okay. I thought I had some love for Ishvara, but now it has become conditional. Why? Because I am not able to understand law of karma, that all that is happening in my life is because of my own karma. Ishvara's laws are all impartial. I did some action, I got some result, that's it. Now what to do if these actions that I did are not giving me these results? Okay, so dependence, attachment is that some conditions have to be fulfilled, only then I will have love or I will have an expression of love. So the more we grow in our understanding, we find that a lot of conditions just drop away. Earlier, if my partner did not tell me I love you 20 times a day, I did not feel loved. Now, having been together for so many years or maybe months or weeks, now we have come to a lovely deep understanding. So I am no longer dependent on the person telling me I love you 20 times a day. Okay, even if he says once is okay, even if he doesn't say is okay, I know, I have no doubt that there is lot of love. Okay, so that's what our journey is, growing from dependence to independence. Independence means it also includes interdependence, that you know, I do certain things for you, you do certain things for me. At the same time, we are complete in and of ourselves. That's why we can come together. Okay, what is happening in deep sleep? Are we still in Manomaya Kosha or are we in one of the other bodies, koshas we have? Actually, we are in Anandamaya Kosha. Why? Because deep sleep is such a pleasurable experience. Yeah. So, any kosha, which is a sheath as though, is an identification. It's a mistake we make at the layer of personality. In deep sleep, there is complete resolution. You are not identified with anything. Or in other words, subject and object are one. Yeah. So then in that state, it is Anandamaya Kosha, because it is deeply happy experience. And then you wake up and you say, oh, it was so nice. I didn't want to wake up at all. That's why we have the snooze button on the mobile. It's not just the alarm. You know, earlier there used to be this grandfather clock. It will wake up the whole neighborhood. Okay, but now thankfully we are not waking up the neighborhood. This snooze button again and again, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. Why? Because it's such a deeply pleasurable experience and we are identified with Ananda. Ananda here, experiential happiness that comes from deep sleep, that comes from subject and object being one. Okay? Any other questions? Yes? I'm not able to see Saji. Or is he the one who has internet problems? He will disconnect and connect again. Okay, got it. Okay, so any other questions? We have time. We have another, I think 15, about 12 minutes. Yeah, okay, one question. How can we purify our heart? Okay, very nice question. In the Vedic tradition, impurity is only raga and dvesha. So, raga is your craving for something and aversion is dvesha. That when I see something, I divide it into possibly what I like and what I don't like. And as a result of which, there is now an impurity in my heart. Why do I call it impurity? Because that craving influences me and totally consumes me. Okay, so let me give you an example. I go back to the previous example, which is, I want somebody in my family to take to yoga. It's a good desire to have. Person is not interested and in fact makes fun of you. That you've gone crazy, you went to India all the way, you wanted to find yourself, you should have sat here in one room. Have you gone mad to go all the way to India and so on. So that's okay. Now you have a raga. Raga means what? You have a craving, you want this thing to happen at any cost. So now what will happen is, you are consumed, overwhelmed by this desire. It's not a normal desire. Desires are very good. But here, this is a binding desire. As a result of which, you are not available to hear what the other person has to say. For the other person, Tai Chi is very good. But you don't like Tai Chi. So you say, no, forget it, all the Tai Chi is all nonsense. You must do yoga. Okay? So now how this impurity works is because I am so consumed by this binding desire, every waking moment I am trying to convince this person. And I'm spoiling the relation we have with each other. Because there can be so many topics of conversation with one person, correct? And there can be one topic where we don't agree at all. That's okay, no problem. But I want the person to change. Okay, so this is an impurity. How do we resolve this impurity? We bring in the disposition of karma yoga in our life. Karma yoga, there is a lot to be said about it. There's a lot of misunderstanding also about it. Karma yoga essentially involves doing actions that are based on dharma and seeing that the laws of Bhagwan give me the result. So it is the attitude of acceptance and prasada. Karma yoga doesn't mean that you are doing something for free. Okay, that's how it is explained. Karma yoga is that you do something because you have a desire, you have a binding desire, but you try to do something that is in line with dharma. So what is appropriate for the person? Well, as long as the person is doing some form of exercise, some discipline, is following Tai Chi, that's fine. I am still caring for that person. So I am not operating according to my raga only. And I am also seeing that we are all different people. That this person in my family has a certain background, has been shaped by certain factors, and it's okay if that person does not like yoga. So now this attitude of karma yoga frees me totally. And that's how my heart slowly starts getting purified. The more I do actions that are in line with dharma, then more and more I see that all the results that are coming to me, they are all prasada from Ishvara. More and more I am in harmony, and more my heart is purified. Okay. Then, okay. How do the Pancha Kleshas affect the Pancha Koshas? Now, the way we understand Pancha Kosha, because Pancha Kosha, at least in the light of Vedanta, I will tell you that we do a viveka, we do an inquiry into Pancha Kosha. And Pancha Kosha, 5 sheets, are mistakes that we make at the level of the kosha. So, the 5 kleshas affect all the 5 koshas. How? I give you 1 or 2 examples. Annamaya kosha. The body is made of Annamaya. It is a modification of food. So, all the mashed potatoes are now a part of this body. Okay? Annamaya. But if I identify, if I say, you know what, this body is me, that when I go to the yoga class, I have a complex, I cannot do so many things. I am very identified with the body. Body is me, I have lot of judgment. So now what has happened is, there is ignorance, avidya, one of the kleshas is there. As a result of which, I make a mistake, I say the body is me. So, avidya, one of the 5 kleshas, has affected, and because of which I mistake myself to be a finite being. So like that, as we go, we will see that all the kleshas are related to the mistakes we make about ourselves, because we are pure being that just happens to have a human experience. Okay, but we confuse the human body that I am only this much. Then of course there are problems. Okay, I think that might just well be the last question. What does Vedanta say about free will? Free will is not absolute. Free will is limited, but it's glorious. And the traditional example that we give is that of a cow that is tied to a pole. The length of the rope, in some people's cases, it may be 5 meters. The cow can jump, dance, sleep, sing, whatever the cow wants to do in that much circumference, okay, that much radius. For some people, the rope might be 12 meters long. So more place, more space to act on certain desires, do different kinds of karma. But the point is that free will is not absolute. But this free will is so glorious because in every moment we have the power to desire, we have the power to act, Kriya Shakti, and we also have the power to know, Ichha Shakti. And this Shakti is available to us at all times. So this free will, if used well, you can see that you are the limitless. That is the best use of free will. That you use your will so much that when you are exposed to the words of the tradition, you can drop your will. You go with the words, okay? And because then that's surrender. Because you're no longer trying to control or master, because you already have mastery, you're already a master. So then you are in harmony with everything. So this is the beauty of free will in Vedanta. Okay? Any more questions? Has Saji been able to join back?
I tried.
Okay, so we've had a lot of questions, lovely questions. It's nice to interact with so many yoga teachers. I have a lot of respect for your discipline and your commitment to this, very, what shall we say? It's a commitment that blesses you. And you are blessing so many other students by teaching what you have learnt without diluting it, because you honor what you have learnt, and it is your service, it is your seva to humanity. So my namaskar to all of you, and I wish you well. My prayers, we will close. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukh Abhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Thank you, Swamiji, and so much thanks for this wonderful section and being with all our students. I know